Hi, this is Chris Simon, and this is my Module 5 Barriers of Web 2.0 video. Thanks for watching. First article that I'll summarize was the barriers to using Web 2.0 video or article. First of all, I needed to know what Web 2.0 was, and it's basically the change from an internet that we're used to that has just had static information that has been posted to a more dynamic user-based information where the users can interact, and it a lot of times can involve social media as well. So it discussed that one of the problems that we're facing is that there's an increase in technology availability, but there hasn't really been an increase in the technology integration in the classroom in a lot of schools. So teachers are getting new technologies, but they're not working to integrate them into their classrooms. It also discussed how the technology gap still exists, although it's starting to become more about the training of using different technologies instead of just the availability of the technologies. A lot of the excuses that they listed were by teachers not integrating the technology were a lack of time, a lack of training, a lack of technical support, a lack of administrative support, and a lot of teachers just have a fear of changing how they do things. They offered some potential solutions, such as changing the culture within a school to encourage a more technology-centered environment, and making training resources more available to teachers needs to become a focus for a lot of schools, especially on an administrative level. So the next article talked about the common barriers that schools face or teachers face. First one was that a lot of times we have a lack of vision on how to use the new technology. We struggle with the changing role of the teacher in the classroom because of the technology. We need to consider the achievement gap, which is really just the technology barrier between the school and the home. How to scale innovative ideas into our classroom and use the technology effectively. There's a lack of money in a lot of circumstances for funding for either the maintenance or the purchase of new technologies. Thinking beyond just the textbooks, where a lot of technology can be used as a textbook replacement, but not necessarily thinking beyond that. And then providing a strong infrastructure that maintains the technology, trains teachers on how to use the technology, trains teachers on how to teach students on how to use the technology. And so that article talked about those main barriers, which I agreed with almost all of them and thought that they were it was a good list. The next one talked about the digital divide, which I was actually kind of surprised on the type of digital divide that they talked about. And I felt that it talked about how there is an increase in access to technology, but even though a larger portion of the population is gaining that technology, and the number of people in that divide is starting to shrink, the gap between the people who do have access to the technology and the people who do not is getting greater and greater and greater. Because technology is growing so rapidly, that the difference between the haves and the have-nots is getting even greater, and the people who don't have access to the technology at this point are falling farther and farther behind the people that do, because technology is growing so rapidly, and those people are just going to become even more left behind because of that gap. It offered some creative solutions about how to get just internet access, wireless internet access that's fast enough to stream videos, which is becoming just a part of everyday life, to some areas, and it's going to take some buy-in on some major parties in order for everyone to get on to get access to this. So I thought that was a very interesting article that I hadn't really thought of before. And then finally, the Open Education article talked about how materials educational materials online are starting to become more accessible for free, and how do we make those materials that are free as high quality as the materials that are funded? So will they be able to compete with funded resources, and will we have enough people that buy in, or enough schools that buy into these type of resources to make it a high quality system that will be sustainable more than just 1 or 2 years? And does this allow people to expand on certain ideas? And I thought it was kind of a good extension of the Web 2.0 idea, where the users are going to be able to start contributing to the resources. Now, do I feel like the digital divide can be resolved? I do think that the digital divide will continue to evolve. I don't think that it'll ever close. I think that there will always be some sort of digital divide between the haves and the have-nots. I thought it was really interesting in the article about the digital divide how it has changed from being less about access to certain types of technology because of smartphones and tablets becoming less expensive and a lot more people having access to those. But for the smaller population in the world, or even in the United States, that don't have access to that, it's becoming even greater. The gap between the people who have access and the people who don't is becoming even greater. So I do think that there will always be some type of the digital divide, even if we do solve the problem of getting everyone access to high-speed internet. Then there will probably be a new, the next problem will occur. And so in order to get those solved, but I do think that we should continue to work towards solving each of those, and that the digital divide, even though it'll always exist, should continue to try to find solutions that'll close that gap. What are some of the skills that I think 21st century students will need to have before they graduate? Well, my biggest thing has always been that we should stop stressing certain types of technology and certain types of word processors and programs like that, and train students how to adapt and become more flexible with new technologies, rather than just receiving that extensive training in any one type of computer or any one type of resource, because technology grows so rapidly and there's different changes every year, and students need to become flexible in that regard, and we need to train them on how to become flexible. Also, the interactions that they have online need to become a major part of our curriculum, or as part of our training on how to make them more responsible online. The more they work online with each other, the more they interact online with each other, they need to learn how to do that. That's not a natural part of human interactions. We need to train them on how to do that. We need to train them on how to envision new uses of the technology, because they will be the ones that are using them. So we need to encourage new ideas on how to use the technology that we have in the classroom. And we also need to really train them on how to distinguish the difference between a valid resource and a non-valid resource, especially as we go towards more open education resources that may not have the most accurate information. What impact has the global economy had on my personal use of the internet? I personally am very fortunate to be in a high-income school where which we already do have a lot of resources, but our PTO has been very generous in their contributions for resources that we feel we might need, as long as we can prove that there is going to be a good educational value. They have been very generous in providing us with a lot of resources. I think a lot of times I take for granted the access issues that a lot of schools face. The technology divide of access to high-speed internet is not an issue in our school, but the training that I think a lot of people have is an issue. So I take that for granted, I think. We have moved to more open education resources, specifically in our science curriculum. We no longer have like a purchased, paid-for science curriculum. Our district has move to open education resources, and so that has been something that we've been encouraged to do because of the funding that has gone away for purchasing new curriculum resources. And I have personally found it easier to find startup money for technology, but have struggled to find the money to maintain those resources, or if it's an online resource that has been paid for, we'll get the startup money for it, but then we'll have to struggle to find the money on how to maintain the license for that resource from year after year. What technology training do I still need to effectively integrate technology in my current position? I feel like the main struggle I have and what I need the most training on is, even though I can adapt well and learn how to use technology pretty quickly, I struggle with finding effective ways to use it and incorporate it in my curriculum. So finding good resources where I can collaborate with other teachers, I think, is something that I still need to learn how to do and become better at. And also learn how to share my ideas with other teachers so that it can become more repeatable in the future and I can build on it in the future. Is my school district equipped with 21st century technology? I mentioned earlier that we're very fortunate to have the materials, and I think that we have a lot of the latest, greatest technology, and I think it's really cool to have that kind of access. We do, however, struggle with having highly trained personnel on how to train the district or even maintain the technology within our district, because we have a lot of Chromebooks out there, but we have we rely on just highly or tech savvy teachers within the building to be the ones that maintain that technology, and it has been a struggle for us. So that has been something that I've noticed. Some of the advantages of innovative practices in schools: it keeps the students more engaged. There's a new technology for the students to create more creative solutions, and even teachers to create more creative solutions to problems that we've had in the past. It creates an environment where even if they don't have the technology at home, here at school we can provide them with some resources that they'll need to use in the future in their jobs. And it provides students with more creative outlets to express their ideas and communicate their ideas. Some of the disadvantages I see are that there is still a pretty large gap between schools and home, and even though schools have rely on really advanced technology, students don't always have those technologies at home. And sometimes the teacher isn't able to integrate it as well as they should in learning. A lot of times teachers will have access to this really nice technology, and then because of a fear of change, they just won't use it, so it's kind of a waste of money. Or even a teacher will feel pressured to use the technology because it's available to them and money has been spent on it, but then they won't use it effectively. And then, have I ever experienced cyberbullying or inappropriate internet usage with my own personal students? I think that in this day and age, eventually every teacher will face this. It's going to be a very common thing. Personally, yes, I have. Earlier in my career, I was using a wiki, which now I would probably compare it closer to Google Classrooms, and it was an issue of password security. It was pretty early on, or I was using younger students, so I felt like it was easier for them to have easier passwords, and as a result, students were able to log on to other students' usernames and make posts as other students that were inappropriate. So basically they were trying to frame other students for inappropriate posts. It was a definite growing experience for me. I learned to stress the importance of digital security, not only digital citizenship, which is very important, and I believe very strongly in it, but also digital security and how to maintain and keep your own passwords safe and secure. So I grew and I learned a lot from that. And I hope that I will continue to grow and learn a lot in the future. Thank you very much for watching the video, and hope you have a great day.